Discipleship training is not about changing the type of tree with all our hard work and dedication. It is to nurture the tree for the fruit that will be produced through it. It is nurtured, cared for, and trimmed when necessary. And the result for all the fruit is to entrust it to God, the good farmer. That's it.
The eternal and unchanging Word of God. Walking with God.
The Bible that transcends time. Walking with God, Part 6. Discovering, not creating. As people of God, when raising and training people of God, the debate that still continuously arises is between can disciples be made through training and disciples cannot be made through training. The humanistic educational theory is that we can make them. That is why numerous educational theories and methods have emerged and are still being developed around this theory. There are many stories in the world that reveal the potential and miraculous achievements of remarkable accomplishments with one tremendous dedication to the seemingly impossible students. There are many touching stories based on true stories, both in books and in movies. So, people believed it is possible, and their beliefs added power to create various programs, and so many training methods emerged. However, when we looked at the final product, the results did not come out as expected. It wasn't completely fruitless, but it wasn't proven like a mathematical formula as it should have been. It didn't apply to everyone, in every situation. This is because we got it wrong from the start. The Bible does not say that man can be made. In particular, God's people are never created. If the man of God is only possible through training, the homework left to us will be focused only on the trainer and the development of the training content. However, as those who are in the field, trainers find that even those who receive the same training in the same environment each show extreme opposite reactions because education and training programs alone cannot provide the answer. However, if we say that a man of God is only by born, we will also ignore those who train them and neglect the training content. Therefore, we must have a clear understanding of this part. God's people are born. The people recorded as men of God in the Bible are Moses, Samuel, David, Elijah, Elisha, Timothy, and many unknown prophets. In addition, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, as well as Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, Peter, John, Apostle Paul and Barnabas, and many other people of faith were held and used by God. However, none of them have been used as God's people without God's plan and choice. God had already chosen and foreordained His people before creation, consecrated them before they were born and even before they were in their mother's womb, and demonstrated God's love by dying for Christ while they were sinners without any good merit. Those whom God predestined, He also called, and those whom He called, He also justified, and those whom He justified, He also glorified. As such, no one can stand as a man of God without God's will and plan. Also, God's choice and distinction are not limited to just salvation. After receiving salvation by God's complete grace, we are talking about the rest of our lives in this world until God calls us to life in this world again. Before Moses was called by God, Moses was already prepared for the work God wanted to accomplish through him in the future. And after he was called, there was a time for refinement to be more mature as a person who was called. God's plan, which Moses never had at all, was not prepared as a man of God while Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness. It is because Moses was called to be a man of God that Moses was able to endure training and trials for another 40 years. After receiving God's calling that was different from the last 40 years, leading the people of Israel who had been constantly rebelling. David was also anointed by God through Samuel and was already a warrior capable of defeating lions and bears before he defeated Goliath, the representative general of the Philistines. And although he suffered for a long time because of Saul, the king chosen by Israel, that time of suffering was a process to get closer to God. It was not that he was prepared and used as a man of God after being anointed. Because God called David a man of God, it was possible when he had nowhere else to flee from Saul, fled to Philistine, the country of Goliath, whom he had killed, feared them, and acted madly and drooled on his beard. Elijah and Elisha undertook many tasks as men of God without a record of what kind of trials and preparations they had to go through before they appeared in the Bible as men of God. It is not that they became God's people by training after the calling, but that they were completely dependent on God's calling. Those whom God has called and chosen will overcome all trials and stand in that place. If we are born in the will of God, we can never deny that calling. Apostle Paul did not become a man of God through education and training after he met Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus. After Paul confessed, "God who set me apart from birth and called me by his grace." And when he met Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus, Jesus Christ said to Ananias, "This man is my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel." And already before Paul left for Gentile missions, the region where he was born was located in Asia Minor, where he grew up naturally encountering many Gentiles from an early age. And he was also a Roman citizen from birth, which was usefully used in the early Gentile missions. Like Paul confessed, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about the hardships we suffered in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired even of life. Indeed, in our hearts we felt the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead." He was able to rely on only God in the midst of extreme suffering because God called him as a man of God. Man of God must be trained. However, this does not mean that there is nothing we can do, since all of God's work from being chosen by God to life's mission is in God's predestination. God's predestination means looking back after our lives and discovering that all our victorious and failures, joys and pains, and every other processes were under God's guidance. It is like Joseph confessed, "And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God." Predestination is not forecasting the future for myself, but is to give thanks in faith for the time that has passed for the sake of God's kingdom and God's people, and to also look forward to the time to come in faith. Therefore, God's people refer to those who are chosen by God and trained for the calling and mission. Through God's providence, plan, and the grace that God pours out, God's people are chosen and set apart. We just do not know who was born as a man of God, what role he will play, when and how. And those who are chosen by God's grace will surely go through the process of training and become God's people. After passing through the fire like test, refinement, and process to becoming pure gold, we will finally be used as a man of God according to God's plan. Those who are called as a man of God have God's training. We can look forward to it. Like Paul's confession, even the hope to live can be cut off. We must find the man of God. In order to make pure gold, we at least need to select a stone that has gold on it and make it go through a series of refining process to produce gold. But no matter how much gold is covered on the outside, a stone without gold is just a stone. If we spend our whole life with a stone covered with gilding, we cannot become pure gold. Though still a crude in appearance, a nugget of gold will become a useful vessel when refined. Also, even if we seek God's people, even if we give them the best training, we must know that God's plan cannot exceed the bounds of His grace. The type of tree is determined by the seed of the tree. All trees will bear fruit according to its seed. The Bible that transcends time, walking with God, continues.